Hey, William, we're live.
Great. Hello, everybody. I'm William Mougayar. Happy to be here for the next 15 minutes. So the premise of my talk is that if we want to change the world with blockchain technology, we need to think of it in multidimensional terms, beyond just thinking that blockchain technology is an enabler of decentralized applications with a lot of users. So there is a lot more to blockchain technology than just being that. Most of us here are involved in dApps and applications, and I want us to think a bit more than that. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is talk about a new paradigm that is more holistic and present the technology of sectors, beyond just technology. We know that technology affects business, but how about society? How about the global setting specifically? And there are many areas in each one of them that blockchain technology has a big impact in knocking, in changing in more fundamental ways. So let's think about that. I've been researching the topic of decentralization for a number of years. Obviously, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many peer-to-peer protocols have accelerated what we can do with decentralization and getting us closer to decentralization. The question is, what would centers look like if they were decentralized? Most of the world today is still run by centers. And this decentralization can happen completely or it can be partially. It could happen gradually, it could happen suddenly. And how do we get there? That is kind of a big question that we are all asking ourselves, everybody that's involved as a builder, as a creator, as an entrepreneur, is wondering, how do we get there? Do we attack centers or do we distract them? And the playbook is known. Many of you that are entrepreneurs know the playbook. With decentralization, you don't install decentralization, you don't install a center that you call decentralization. You enable a platform, a protocol, system, and then you let that network flourish. The center of attention is now the activity between users across all nodes. And you build your business model or your organizational model around that. And I wrote this 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago, in my book, The Business Blockchain. So that playbook has not changed, and this is what most of you are practicing today. And the question is, how do we disrupt those centers? How do you attack centers? Well, you don't attack centers, because centers are very resilient and they don't want to change. And if you think that you have something that is better because of blockchain technology, it is not good enough, because better is not a user acquisition strategy, which means that if you tell me that something is better and you want me to go and try it, I am likely not going to try something because it's bad. The psychology of change is that users are risk-averse in the domain of gains, but users are more people. Think of people, not just users. People are more risk-seeking in the domain of losses, which means that if you had, God forbid, your data lost or somebody stole your information from a particular system, for sure you would be incented to make a change because you were hit, you had a pain. So I'm going to change if I have pain. But if you come tell me, well, this is better, I'm not going to change because I'm happy. Most people are happy with what they have. And unfortunately, only disasters and accidents or pain will make users change and try something new, because the value proposition has to be a lot more than just better. So how do you bring these decentralization and apps to the mainstream? Some of you are thinking of DeFi, which is the biggest trend today, that's gaining a lot of traction. And one of the questions is, well, how do we bring DeFi to the mainstream? And some of you may think, well, how about a better user experience? How many of you say, well, yeah, we need better user experience? But do you really think that a better user experience is all that's necessary to bring decentralized applications into the mainstream? I don't think so. A better user experience is necessary, but it is not sufficient to get us to decentralization with more users. Look at DeFi. There are a lot of beautiful DeFi apps, wallets from Argent On and others that have nailed the user experience, but it is still not comprehensible for the mainstream market. So in my mind, what we need more of is education. We need to educate the market, the greater market, so that they can move to the small niche decentralized apps. Let's take the DAOs, which are the ultimate in decentralization. If you look at what can you do today, if you're part of a DAO or you're involved in a DAO, and any one of these DeFi protocols have a form of DAO in there. So what can you do? You can verify memberships. You can say, I own so many tokens, therefore I am a member. You can vote on proposals, on decisions. You can submit proposals. You can debate them on Discord, Telegram, whatever chat rooms and forums exist. You can predict. Prediction markets are part of that now. And you can fund projects, of course, if the votes go through, funding is approved automatically. But are we happy that that's all we can do? I think this is barely scratching the surface of what the potential is. Let's take voting, for example. Everybody is so focused on voting because that is the best enabling thing in DAOs. And sometimes votes are done and they result in good decisions. But I can tell you, in most businesses, if most decisions were made by voting, businesses would make a lot of bad decisions. Voting is not always the best way to make decisions. Although in many cases, they do lead to some good decisions if it was delayed enough and if democracy runs well in the context of governments. And now we talk about briefly the fact that how can we apply what we have learned in terms of the governance of blockchains? How can we apply that to the governance by blockchain? What have we learned in terms of governance of blockchain? We know all about the properties of governance in blockchains, of blockchains. Really about consensus, about transparency. Community is always first. There's frequent voting. There is real-time change. If something doesn't work, it can be changed in minutes, hours, days. It doesn't take forever. And the question here, how can we apply now these constructs to businesses, and how can we apply them to government? That is the key question here going forward. How do we let blockchain technology go beyond just the technology sector itself? Of course, democratic voting is great, but only if you have the right democracy, if the right system is in place to start with. And bad governance, as we all know, can lead to disasters. In the case of the blockchain world, we have our own case of a big disaster that happened a few years ago in the case of Ethereum, and it was a lesson for the whole blockchain industry. That was a disaster. And you could say, well, is it because of bad governance, or is it because of the bad contract? That's not a smart contract. And my answer would be, it's a chicken and egg question. Maybe bad governance led to having a bad smart contract. profoundly. Here's another example of bad governance that can lead to a disaster. This is real government. This picture, some of you may recall last week. This is not from World War II. This is from last week in Lebanon. Big disaster caused from governance negligence, governance incompetency that led to the explosion of 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate, probably the largest explosion since World War II. That is bad governance that can lead to real disasters where people get killed. It can lead to financial and lives being ruined. We don't want to go there. But there's a lot we can learn from blockchain-inspired governance. And my question to you is, can and could blockchain-inspired governance lead to better governments for the world? This is a partial list of places, countries or locations where the majority of people are not satisfied with their governments, yet they cannot implement change so easily. In some cases, they say it's democracy, but it's not the right kind of democracy. If democracy cannot make change, it's not democracy. Why? And that is the question we need to ask. What are we trying to improve with the blockchain? And this is where the lessons are. We want to improve decision-making. We want to improve control, accountability, innovation, inclusion, wealth distribution, broader benefits to everybody, transaction costs, freedom. All of these not just apply for the blockchain, they should apply for a number of other sectors. Not just in technology, in business, in society, in the world. A lot of these centers are ready to be knocked off, are ready to be challenged. And now the areas in red are the ones that we really have made progress in. Of course, technology. We talk about distributed and decentralized technology. We are on the way to having more data ownership. We are on the way to having more decentralized storage, of having uncensorable content, of having decentralized computing, smart contract revolution, where money is programmable, where you can make decisions, you can enact them, if this and that. The financial sector is being challenged, is being reconstructed because of decentralized finance. These are the lighthouses, these are guideposts that we should keep in mind. But there should be more. Today, cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, DeFi, they are the best examples we have. And these are not looking, they are not looking for sympathy or validation from existing centers. Players in DeFi are not going to the banks and asking them, oh, can we do that? They're just doing it. Blockchain technology is not going to the database administrator and saying, can we change your database? I want to put a distributed ledger instead of a database. No, we're doing it. Cryptocurrency is not begging the central bankers to change their policies. It's happening. It's already out there. And the question is, what sectors are next? The thing with DeFi is that it has something atomic. It's cryptocurrency. And in my opinion, each one of these other sectors have to have something atomic, something that is native to their own sector for them to be disrupted. And that is really the promise of the blockchain. When we look at each one of them one by one, what will be the native thing that will disrupt this technology, this sector? And maybe the next thing is work, the promise of decentralized ownership, where you can earn tokens, you can earn currency based on work you've done. And you're not just promised a reward, maybe you're promised an ownership. That could change things. The blockchain technology industry, most of you are in it. You have to keep doing what you're doing to inspire the other sectors to adopt, to adapt, and get inspired by what the blockchain can enable. And really, again, you cannot go and knock on these centers because it's difficult to go head on and change the centers. We have to create new systems outside of these centers. To quote Buckminster Fuller, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing one obsolete. That is what DeFi is doing. It is still small, but it is growing. It is going to make the current system obsolete. Cryptocurrency is going to make the current monetary systems obsolete gradually. And that is really the promise of the blockchain. So if we want to change the world, our world is barely getting started in the blockchain. Thank you.